Hi, everybody. Bryan Norcross here with a 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern Time update on this Monday on Tropical Storm Francine that has been intensifying this afternoon and is forecast to become a hurricane by the overnight hours tonight. Let's take a look at the latest advisory information. 65 miles an hour is the estimate for the top winds in the circulation, moving north-northwest, so slowly at 7 miles per hour, and it's actually repositioned itself, or actually formed, the center is formed closer to the coast this afternoon. So these outer bands are very close to the coast, in some cases affecting the coast. There's the estimated pressure. Hurricane hunters will be in there this evening to really get a good analysis of this, and then there will be regular updates from the hurricane hunters throughout the duration here until the storm makes landfall sometime on Wednesday, currently forecast for Wednesday afternoon, but that is subject to change. When we look at the satellite picture here, we can clearly see a well-defined band wrapping around. That's normally evidence that the storm is intensifying and on its way to being a hurricane. And we also have some outer bands out here that also look like they're trying to wrap around. The more of that wrapping that goes on, the better formed the structure of the storm is. Now, coming out of Brownsville, Texas here, kind of a long-range look at the radar, we can see what appears to be an eye down in here and maybe a part of an eye wall forming there, but it's right at the edge of radar range, and exactly what's going on here is going to await the hurricane hunters going out there and checking it out here this evening. And here you see, though, a very strong band with very gusty winds, still obviously offshore. But as this system moves in a north-northwesterly direction, kind of something like this, these bands are going to affect coastal sections here: Matamoros, New Mexico, Brownsville, South Padre Island, maybe Port Isabel, Texas, there in extreme South Texas. So everybody there, just be aware that intense bands on the edges of this storm are very possible with heavy rain and very gusty winds. Looking close up there, you can't really kind of make out that there's something, obviously, a center trying to form there, but not exactly obvious exactly what that structure is, because it's right on the edge of the range from the land-based radar. On the wider view, a couple things to look at. First of all, you can see the model analysis of the center, and it's just not very well defined yet, but getting better defined. What you see, these colors here indicate where the taller thunderstorms are in this band that we saw on the radar that was so intense wrapping around here. We can also here see, if we look at the clouds moving in the cloud movement of the wispy kind of clouds, notice them moving in this direction here, and then up in here you see these clouds kind of pushing out that way. What that's telling us is that the upper levels of the atmosphere, the air is flowing out of the storm. That's a sign that the environment around it is conducive for strengthening, and indeed, that's what the National Hurricane Center forecast is. So here is the latest cone. So the idea is it's moving slowly this evening into the overnight hours, but develops into Hurricane Francine. This, when it says Tuesday a.m. here, it nominally means 2 a.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Central Time. So we're this evening, it heads toward a hurricane strength. Then in the overnight hours and into tomorrow, here we are at 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, 85-mile-an-hour hurricane, and then intensifying as we get into the early morning hours on Wednesday. So this is the opportunity it has to intensify. How intense does it get? Some of the computer models indicate it getting stronger than 100 miles per hour, but certainly a strengthening hurricane during that time. Then we get up into the bigger question marks on intensification up in here. The Hurricane Center is indicating about a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane at landfall, with the center somewhere there on the Louisiana coast. It may get stronger in between, but the upper level winds become much more hostile somewhere in the vicinity of the North Gulf or the coastline. If it's offshore, that's great because that means the weakening process will start sooner, but it could be very close to landfall, and it's just too close to call at this point. But the forecast currently is for a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane at landfall, Category 2. That means prepare for the possibility of a Category 3 when the storm, actually the center, makes landfall. Remember, the cone is only the center of the storm, not all the effects of the storm. If it were to make landfall over here, it would be midday-ish tomorrow, maybe early afternoon. If it were to move to the right side of the cone, it would be a little later because it's going to take a little longer to get to the coast there. But with a center in this area, obviously we're going to drive water to the right of wherever that center comes ashore, so dangerous storm surge conditions. Then moving inland, the storm weakens as it moves up into Louisiana, southern Mississippi, maybe even into Arkansas as it moves up there on Thursday. All right, here are the warnings that are issued as of the 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern Time advisory. And you see hurricane warnings for this coastal part of Louisiana up to about almost New Iberia area, moving inland and all along the coast. It's a very, very vulnerable coastline for very high storm surge, and strong winds there are just obviously dangerous to any of the communities, small communities that are there along the coast. We'll talk about the storm surge in a second. Hurricane warnings are all about the wind, so the strong wind extending almost up to I-10 there, and this thinking exactly where the center comes in, obviously, is why we have the cone. We don't know exactly, but this is the area of biggest threat. Then tropical storm warnings all the way up much farther north. Winds over 40 miles per hour obviously can knock out power, take down tree limbs, and do damage to less well-built structures. As of right now, just tropical storm watches over here for the New Orleans metro area and extending further north, but hurricane watches in effect over here for the Grand Isle area, just in case. Hurricane watch means possible hurricane force winds in case the storm stays to the right side of the cone. We also have tropical storm watches over here in the general metro Houston area. And then we get to the storm surge warning. Storm surge warning means be ready for, in that area, water at least 3 feet above normal high tide. Be ready for that somewhere in there. And storm surge watch is the possibility of that in metro New Orleans. And I'll show you in a second what it would take to get the water up into there. So this is the forecast now. If the storm were located here right before landfall in the morning hours on Wednesday, let's say. So here's the wind pushing the water toward the coast. And the idea is that somewhere in this area, from west of Grand Isle over to about Calcasieu Pass there, where the Calcasieu River goes on up to Lake Charles, up to 10 feet of storm surge above normal high tide. So somewhere in that area, not the whole area, but that's what everybody needs to be ready for, because we can't say where that band of strongest winds is going to push that maximum storm surge. Is it going to be there, or might it be more over here? That's why what the storm surge forecast means is be ready for somewhere in that area to get that maximum storm surge up to 10 feet. Over here by Grand Isle, up to 7 feet, and then less on the west side of the storm, with the expectation that the winds would be coming more this way. But again, the idea is to be ready, because before, when the storm is down in here, obviously the winds are pushing this way and pushing some storm surge and getting some water rise up there along the coast. Now, about the New Orleans area, if the storm is over in here, we're going to get wind coming in like that. So let's look at that closer up. So if the wind is coming in like this, we have the possibility of the water being pushed up, and the possibility is up to 4 feet. But if the storm really does stay to western Louisiana, that's not going to happen. But because there's the cone, because there's the uncertainty, the idea is to be ready for up to 4 feet Lake Bourne, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas there in Metro New Orleans. So this is a be ready for situation and giving you an idea what could happen, but it would take the storm coming farther to the east, the right side of the cone, to get that water up into there, because we're just, otherwise it won't be strong enough. The wind will be blowing it in. There will be seawater rise all along that coast. This here is like a catcher's mitt to catch the water, but you won't get the maximum amount of that could happen if you don't get the stronger winds from a closer hurricane on the approach. So we'll see exactly how that works out. Then we get the heavy rainfall in some corridor here moving north, up to a foot of rain in some areas, widespread 3 to 5 inches, maybe 6 or 7 inches, and then that water all has to drain south down the Mississippi, down the Pearl River. Pearl River is over here, down the Vermilion River through Lafayette, and all those different rivers and bayous all have to drain with the storm surge coming in. So flooding will be a threat. We'll see how tomorrow that gets refined and exactly where the areas of highest flood threat are. There are the models, and what you see is we have one outlier over here, but generally the models have shifted to the left this afternoon. Now here's the thing. The models that we look at in the afternoon actually run off of data that is gathered in the morning. Well, in the morning we didn't have a center. We didn't really know where the center was going to form. So these models are all going to shift around a bit, but this afternoon they shifted to the left a little bit, and the consensus is shifted to the left a little bit. That's why the cone shifted left a little bit. But now that we have a better defined center, now that we're going to have all these hurricane hunters in there gathering data like crazy here all the way through this period, we're going to have 3 planes in there this evening gathering data. So tomorrow morning's computer forecasts are going to have the benefit of all that. So we'll see if any kind of more shifting goes on with those forecasts that we'll get in the overnight hours that will be reflected in the 4 a.m. Central, 5 a.m. Eastern Time forecast. When we look at the track uncertainty, what we see compared to this morning there was tend to be a focus over in here. Now it's more spread out, maybe even a little bit farther to the west, again indicating that general shift this afternoon of the tracks just slightly to the west. But I don't want to write anything into it until we really get the more certain data, and that won't come in until later today. What's going on with the steering? Well, right now what's happening is this high pressure system and the flow around it is nudging it to the north or to the north-northwest. As we've been talking about, it's been 5 to 7 miles per hour today. But what's going to happen is this dip in the jet stream is going to come along, and it's going to get here over Texas, and it's going to grab it and pull it to the north, somewhere up, as we know, into Louisiana. Well, along with that comes this band of very strong winds you see here, and those are going to want to weaken the system. So the question is, when this dip comes along, where exactly will that band be? Will it be over the northern Gulf, so the weakening starts before it gets ashore? Or will it be closer to the shoreline, so the weakening doesn't begin really until landfall or even after? That's the uncertainty there. But the expectation is probably we'll get some trend toward weakening right at the coastline. But don't pin your hopes on that too much yet. Let's get better data. But that's what's going to happen. This dip in the jet stream is going to come along, pull it to the north, take it up here into the mid-south eventually, where it will die out and the moisture will just spread on across the south and up toward the Midwest. So that's where we stand here this evening. We'll see how all this goes tomorrow. Of course, we'll be on Fox Weather talking about all this. And if you don't have Fox Weather, by the way, just download it on your phone, or you can go to foxweather.tv and see all the different ways that you can get Fox Weather. We're on there all day, all night, talking about the storm. It's your weather source that I'll be on there throughout the event. So, all right, we'll see you there on Fox Weather, or keep you up to date right here, of course. Have a good evening.